Long ago, before the great cities were built and the earth itself knew the weight of mortal ambition, there was a god, the god of wealth, but not in the way you might imagine. His gift was for those desperate for more, those who yearned for what was just beyond reach. His name was Tiurakh. To speak, it is to invite a hunger, an insatiable thirst. Now, his name is lost, buried beneath the ashes of forgotten empires, whispered only by those who still dare to seek what was never meant to be found. Listen, do you hear that? The faint sound of gold shifting through the cracks of the earth, soft and steady clink that rises like a prayer from the depths of time. It's said that the worshippers of Tiurakh could hear it too. The sound of fortune calling, their hearts racing as they followed its distant song. That was long ago, when his temple stood, adorned with treasures beyond mortal dreams, hidden deep within mountains where no light could reach. Only the brave or the foolish dared to approach. Tiurakh was not a god of simple riches. No, his gift was something far darker. His followers didn't just ask for money. They asked for what money could never buy. They begged for power, for influence, for control over the very forces that shaped the world. They sought him with offerings, with rituals that twisted the heart and soul, asking for the kind of wealth that could bend the heavens themselves. But in the end, those very desires became their undoing. Now, only silence remains. The temple is rubble, its walls crumbling beneath the weight of time and neglect. But the air still carries a scent of faint, musty perfume of incense, long burned away, yet somehow clinging to the stones. As you step into the ruins, the gold is gone, but the traces of Tiurakh linger, etched in forgotten glyphs and worn symbols on the walls. Tiurakh, they say, but the words seem to distort as they leave the lips of those who dare speak them. Do you feel it? The quiet pulse in the air? The same one that called those ancient worshippers here? That beckoned them to lay their offerings at the altar. Their wealth was not the glittering coin you see in your dreams, nor the promise of endless riches. No, it was the power to influence the world, to hold sway over the hearts of men and the fortunes of kings. What they didn't know, however, was that Tiurakh did not give without taking. Their offerings, it is said, were not just of gold or grain, but of something far more precious: their trust, their loyalty, their very souls. The rituals were performed in secret, under the cover of night, in places where no other gods could see. Except for Tiurakh, who, it is whispered, was never truly seen at all. Just a voice in the dark, an unseen presence, guiding the hands of those who sought more than they could understand. Their lives and fates bound forever to the god of wealth. But somewhere along the way, the wealth began to rot. The promises, once so tempting, soured, leaving those who had called upon Tiurakh's name broken and empty. The riches, which had seemed to flow so freely, began to dry up, leaving only ruin behind. A kingdom once prosperous crumbled under its own greed. The priests who once spoke Tiurakh's name with reverence now found themselves silenced by the weight of their own desires, their voices choked by the very wealth they had sought to claim. Do you hear them? The whispers. Not just from the stone and the gold, but from the very earth beneath your feet. The echoes of those who came before you, seeking answers, seeking redemption. They too thought they could bargain with a god who was more than they could understand. They too thought they could control their hunger and take without consequence. But Tiurakh, it seems, does not give without a price. The temple, now nothing but shattered remnants, was once a place where offerings were laid, piles of gold, jewels, treasures of all kinds. But beneath them, hidden in the deepest chamber, was the true offering, the final one. It was said that those who were chosen, those who had ascended to the highest ranks of Tiurakh's worship, would be asked to give something far more precious than gold. They would offer their faith, their very essence, in exchange for what they craved. And so they did. They laid their trust upon the altar and left with wealth beyond measure. But none of them ever returned. Tiurakh, once a god who could answer prayers for the most coveted of all things, was forgotten, erased from history, as though the very act of remembering his name was enough to tear apart the fabric of the world. And yet you cannot escape him. His presence lingers, as faint and elusive as the golden whispers that lead you deeper into this forgotten place. His wealth, his power, it all still exists somewhere. hidden beneath layers of time and dust, waiting for those who are foolish or perhaps desperate enough to seek it. The story of Tiurakh is not just one of lost wealth, but of the toll it takes. It's a tale of those who sought more than they could ever have, who reached for the stars and lost their very souls in the process. But now, you stand at the threshold of this forgotten place, and the question remains, will you walk the path of those who came before you, seeking the riches of Tiurakh and risking everything? Or will you turn away, leaving the gods' forgotten gold undisturbed where it belongs? Now, let's get started with today's story. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoy tales from the forgotten corners of history, be sure to subscribe. The air grows heavier as you continue deeper into the ruins, your footsteps echoing on the cold stone floors. The walls, worn and cracked, still whisper the secrets of those who once worshipped here. Among the rubble, you find something small and delicate, hidden beneath the decay of centuries. A fragment of a sacred script, its words fading but still legible. It speaks of the rituals that once took place here, the offerings that were laid upon the altar of Tiurakh, and the great cost of those offerings. The followers of Tiurakh, it is said, did not offer mere trinkets or sacrifices to their god. Their offerings were far more intricate. They didn't just seek wealth in the material sense. No, they asked for more than that. They asked for a connection to the divine, for power over the world itself. They desired not just gold and jewels, but dominion over the hearts of men and the forces that governed fate. It was in these sacred rites that the true nature of Tiurakh's power began to reveal itself. As the offerings laid before him, rituals carried out with the utmost secrecy and reverence, were not simply acts of devotion. They were acts of binding, threads of fate woven into the very fabric of the world. Those who participated in these ceremonies bound themselves to the god in ways they could never fully understand. The offerings, however, were not just of wealth. The most sacred and sought after offering was that of trust. Trust in Tiurakh, trust in the power he bestowed, and trust in the promises he made. It is said that those who placed their faith in him were given a glimpse into the secret workings of the world. They saw beyond the veil of material things and understood the true nature of power. Yet to trust Tiurakh was to accept a debt that could never be repaid. The power he granted could be fleeting, like a flash of light in the darkness, only to fade when most needed. The more one sought his favor, the more one was drawn into his web until there was no escape. But trust was not the only offering. The rituals also demanded something far more profound: loyalty. Loyalty to Tiurakh in his will, loyalty to the wealth he bestowed, and loyalty to the idea that the god's power could never be questioned. Those who dared to question the terms of the pact, who sought to understand the true nature of the god they worshipped, were often the ones who paid the greatest price. The ancient scripts describe in haunting detail how these offerings were made. Devotees would gather in the deepest chambers of the temple, beneath the watchful eyes of statues that never blinked. The air would grow thick with incense, and the flicker of candlelight would cast long, unsettling shadows on the walls. There at the altar, they would lay their most sacred possessions: gold, jewels, fine cloths, objects of great personal value. But the greatest offerings were always the human ones. The most loyal followers of Tiurakh would offer not just their wealth, but their very souls. These offerings, once made, would change the worshipper forever. They became extensions of Tiurakh's will, their lives tethered to the god of wealth in ways they could not comprehend. It is whispered that these souls were not sacrificed in the conventional sense, not in the way other gods might demand blood. No. These offerings were far more insidious. The souls offered to Tiurakh were not taken away, they were absorbed, consumed by the god's insatiable hunger until there was nothing left of the individual except their devotion, their faith, and their unrelenting need for wealth. But what of those who failed to make the offering? What happened to those who could not or would not give of themselves in the ways Tiurakh demanded? The temple texts provide no clear answer. They speak of empty devotees, those whose spirits were consumed by their own desires, their faith turned into a hollow shell. They sought to take from Tiurakh without giving, and in the end, they were left with nothing but a constant gnawing. Hunger always searching, never satisfied. As you stand before the remnants of the altar, the silence in the room feels suffocating. The air seems to pulse with a strange energy, as though the offerings made here are still lingering, waiting to be completed. You feel the weight of the god's presence, even in his absence, as though he is watching, waiting for the next devotee to step forward and offer up their trust, their loyalty, their soul. But what is it that you seek, traveler? Do you to desire wealth of a kind that is not measured in gold and jewels? Do you long for the power that Tiurakh once promised? Power over the world? Over fate itself? The whispers that once filled these halls are faint now, but they are still there, calling you forward, beckoning you to partake in the offering. As you turn to leave the altar behind, you sense something shifting in the air, as though Tiurakh's eyes are upon you. The question remains, are you willing to offer everything in exchange for power? Or will you leave this place behind, untouched by the god's curse? Thanks for watching. If you want to explore more forgotten lore, be sure to subscribe. You feel the chill in the air grow colder as you step away from the altar. The remnants of the sacred rituals hang heavy in the silence of this ruined temple. But there's something else, something not quite right. It's as if the very stones are breathing, holding their secrets close, refusing to let go of what was lost. The gold is gone, the riches of the past scattered to the winds, but the curse that Tiurakh left behind is that lingers, persistent and unforgiving. It's said that Tiurakh's followers didn't just disappear, they were undone. Once they walked in prosperity, their coffers overflowing with wealth beyond imagination. They were the kings and queens of their time, their names whispered in the courts of empires. But somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. The blessings of Tiurakh, once so sweet, began to sour. The first signs were subtle. The wealth began to fade. It's not all at once, but slowly, like a tide pulling away from the shore. It was as if the very essence of fortune, once so readily available, was slipping through their fingers. What had once been an endless flow of riches now dried up, like a well that ran dry after a long drought. The signs were ignored at first, the wealth still glistening, still plentiful. But the devotees of Tiurakh began to feel the grip of something darker, an emptiness that could not be filled. Some say it was the price of their offerings, their trust, their loyalty that caused the curse to manifest. Others say it was the god himself, whose fickle nature played games with the hearts of men. But the truth, if we can call it that, is more terrifying than any explanation. Tiurakh didn't take back his blessings. No. Instead, he offered the curse of unfulfilled promises. The curse manifested in ways no one expected. It wasn't a simple loss of wealth, not a fall from grace, like the gods of old might decree. No, the true curse of Tiurakh lay in the expectation, the promise of wealth without end. It's the promise that the world itself would bend to those who served him. When that promise wasn't fulfilled, when the god's favor failed to manifest, it left behind a hollowness, a deep, gnawing hunger that could never be sated. Those who had once been the most loyal to Tiurakh found themselves wandering in a fog of confusion. Their riches, though vast, no longer brought them the joy they once did. They couldn't spend their wealth, for it felt like a weight upon their hearts. They couldn't enjoy their power, for it was tainted by the unkept promise that Tiurakh had made. It was said they would hear whispers in their dreams, voices of the god, promising that the wealth would return, that prosperity would flow again. But those promises never came to pass, and so the curse took hold. The once proud worshippers of Tiurakh became shadows of themselves, driven mad by the god's silence. They searched endlessly, far and wide, for answers, but found nothing. No words of comfort, no sign from the god they had served so faithfully, only the echo of their unfulfilled desires. The promises had been made, but they were never kept, and now they were haunted by them. There were those who tried to break the curse. They sought out ancient rituals, hoping to appease Tiurakh, to rekindle the blessings they had once enjoyed. But no matter what, they offered more gold, more jewels, more souls. The wealth remained elusive. And so, in their desperation, they began to give more than just material things. They gave their time, their lives, and in the end, even their very spirits. Yet Tiurakh remained silent, as if he had moved on, leaving his followers to wither in their own misery. The temple itself, once a place of great power, became a ruin, consumed by time and the god's abandonment. The walls that had once echoed with chants now lay silent, broken by the weight of lost hope. The once grand altar, where sacrifices had been made, stands empty, as though awaiting a return that will never come. You stand now in the remnants of this place, surrounded by the ruins of a lost civilization, and you feel it the weight of the god's absence. Tiurakh's curse is still here, lingering in the air, just as it lingered in the hearts of his followers. The promise of wealth, of power, of control, none of it was real. It was a fleeting illusion, a mirage that danced just out of reach, only to vanish when it was most needed.
Ow!
The question now is this: why did Tiurakh forsake his followers? Why did the god of wealth, who once blessed them with abundance, turn his back on them? The answers are buried in forgotten scrolls, in the ashes of the temple, in the silence of the air. But no one has ever been able to answer them fully. Was it the greed of his followers that led to the fall? Or was it the god's own flaw, his insatiable hunger for power, that caused him to break the promise he had made? The whispers in the ruins speak of a secret pact, one that no one truly understood. A pact that tied the god's favor to a balance that could not be maintained. Perhaps it was too much for mortals to bear. Or perhaps it was simply too much for Tiurakh himself. The truth remains lost, like so many other forgotten things, drifting in the wind that carries away the remnants of an ancient faith. And now you are here, standing amidst the ruins, and you wonder, will you seek to uncover the truth of the god's curse? Will you delve deeper into the mysteries of Tiurakh's promises? Or will you leave this place behind, taking only the knowledge of a forgotten god and the warning that wealth, too much wealth, can be a curse that no one can outrun? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more stories from the forgotten corners of history. See you next time. The deeper you venture into these ruins, the more you feel at the weight of something ancient, something beyond mortal understanding. This temple isn't as silent as it seems. Beneath the dust and decay, the stone walls whisper a forgotten name, Tiurakh, as if begging to be remembered. The shadows stretch and twist unnaturally, like living things watching you with unseen eyes. But it's not the whispers or the darkness that grabs your attention now. It's the mark. It's a symbol, barely visible in the dim light, carved into the stone floor right beneath your feet. You kneel to examine it, the lines faint but unmistakable. At first it looks like just another faded, ancient pattern, but the more you look, the more you realize it's a sigil, a mark that, even after centuries, still pulses with an eerie, unearthly energy. It's intricate, filled with twisting lines and sharp angles, almost like a pattern meant to ensnare the very fabric of space. This isn't just a symbol of wealth. It's a connection, a binding, a promise made. A promise that ties the bearer of this mark to Tiurakh's will forever. You've heard the legends. Of course, how Tiurakh's followers would bear this mark on their flesh, inked into their skin, burned into their very souls. But its true purpose has always been a mystery. Some say it was a seal of protection, a way to invoke the god's power for wealth and success. Others whisper that it was a curse, tying the bearer to Tiurakh's favor, but also to a debt that could never be repaid. Those who wore the mark were said to live lives of constant pursuit, always chasing more wealth, more power, never able to stop. The god's gift was both a blessing and a trap. You trace the lines of the sigil, feeling a faint hum beneath your fingertips, as if it's alive and responding to your touch. This symbol holds more meaning than what's written in the old texts. It's not just allegiance, it's a vow. It seems that God's promises are never broken, for better or for worse. As you stand and scan the temple again, you see it everywhere. Hidden in plain sight, carved into walls, etched into the floor, appearing in the most unlikely places. The temple itself seems built around this symbol, as if it's the heart of the god's power, his very essence binding it all together. The more you look, the more the mark seems to shift and change, adapting and evolving with time. The question presses on you like a heavy weight. What does this mark truly mean? Why were so many willing to bind themselves to it? Is it a sign of favor, or the first step on a path to madness? The answer, you feel, isn't in history, but in the feeling it evokes. This mark isn't just a symbol of wealthy, it's a symbol of control. Those who bore it weren't just wealthy. They were under the god's thumb, tethered to his will, driven by an unquenchable need to possess. The idea of riches beyond imagination was the sweet temptation that drew them in. The mark was the price they paid, and once you take the mark, once you offer your trust, your soul, your loyalty, you can never escape it. Whispers tell of those who tried to remove the mark to break free from its binding power. None succeeded. Once given, it cannot be undone. You can feel it now, that subtle pull. The weight of the mark, though you haven't taken it, seems to press upon you. The air thickens, the walls close in. And for a moment, you almost hear Tiurakh's whisper, low, insistent, a voice calling you to take what you deserve. The gold, the power, the control. It's all there, just out of reach, waiting for you to claim it. But is it worth the price? Can you resist the pull of this God's promise, knowing the cost it exacts? The people who walked these halls before you weren't fools. They knew the risks, yet they chose to pay the price. They chose to bear the mark and offer their souls for power. But now, standing in the shadow of this temple, you have to wonder how many of them truly understood what they were offering. The mark is a covenant, a binding contract that ties you to the God's will, and there is no turning back. As you leave the chamber, the mark lingers in your mind. The question is no longer whether you will take it, but whether you will fall victim to its pull. Will you give in to the promises of wealth and power? Or will you turn away, leaving the God's mark to fade into the dust, forgotten once again? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, be sure to subscribe for more. As you wander deeper into the ruins of Tiurakh's temple, a chilling realization sets in. There are no signs of the people who once called this place home, no records of their final days, no monuments to their glory. The walls, though covered in cryptic symbols, are eerily silent. The very air feels thick with the absence of those who once lived in the shadow of their God, thriving in his favor. It seems the followers of Tiurakh vanished without a trace, but not in the way you might think. They didn't flee in fear or scatter into the world, leaving their sacred texts and gold behind. No, their disappearance was far more subtle, more unsettling. It's as if they were swallowed by time itself, erased from history as though they had never existed. Their names are lost, their temples destroyed, their practices forgotten. All that remains are whispers, the faintest echoes of a once great worship that now feels like a fading dream. But why? What caused these devoted followers, so certain of their God's promises, to disappear so completely? The answer, it seems, lies with Tiurakh himself. The cult of the god of wealth was never for the masses. His worshippers were powerful figures, wealthy merchants, ambitious rulers, the desperate who sought control over the world. There were a select few bound by their shared hunger for a wealth that would grant them eternal influence. But that very ambition became their undoing. Tiurakh did not give power without a cost. His blessings were a trap. The more his followers received, the more they desired and the more they sacrificed. In the end, that desire consumed them. Whispers in the ruins tell a different story, that their disappearance was not a choice, but a fate written by the god himself. Some say Tiurakh was never a giver of wealth, but a collector of souls, trapping them in a cycle of desire and consumption. Once his followers reached the height of their ambition, they were devoured by the very hunger they had sought to satisfy. Even those who weren't directly consumed were not spared. The last of Tiurakh's worshippers faded into the shadows of history. Some say they went into hiding, abandoning their power to escape the god's eternal grip. Others believe they left this world entirely, transported to another realm beyond our reach. No one knows for sure. The texts detailing their rituals are now just fragments, torn pages, and burned manuscripts. Scholars who find them come back with incomplete, contradictory stories, as if the knowledge itself resists being understood. The temple, once filled with devotion, now stands empty. The altar, once bathed in gold, is now a hollow relic. The only thing left of those who worshipped here is the symbol of Tiurakh, etched into the stone, growing weaker with each passing year. The memory of the god, once so powerful, now lingers like the faintest dream. Standing here, the truth becomes clear. Tiurakh's followers didn't just vanish, they were forgotten. The god himself erased them. There are no tombs, no memorials. Their legacy has been wiped clean, and yet something else lingers in the air. A feeling that the god's presence hasn't entirely faded. Perhaps there are still those who seek him, whispering his name in secret, desperate for his promises. Perhaps the cult hasn't truly disappeared. You can feel it now, the pull. The temptation to uncover the truth, to seek the god's power, and to risk everything for it. But you also feel the warning, the heavy weight of the cost. Because once you seek Tiurakh, there's no turning back. His promises are always kept. And as you step deeper into the ruins, you have to wonder, will you find the answers you seek? Or will you, like all the others, be forgotten? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, be sure to subscribe for more. You find yourself drawn deeper into the temple, following a faint trail of forgotten rituals, almost as if an unseen hand is guiding you. The farther you go, the darker the air becomes, thick with a strange sense of inevitability, like you're approaching the very heart of this forsaken place. It's not the decay that unsettles you, or the deep silence hanging in the air. It's the feeling that something ancient is waiting for you in the depths. Then, in the distance, you see it. The altar. It stands at the center of a large circular chamber, the stone worn and cracked, but still imposing. The walls curve upward toward a domed ceiling, their surfaces covered in ancient symbols. The air here is colder, heavier, as if the stones themselves are breathing in the remnants of long-forgotten prayers. This was the place, the heart of Tiurakh's worship. This altar was once where the most sacred rituals took place, where followers would gather to make their final offerings. And these weren't just offerings of gold, but of their very selves. There's something about this chamber that feels alive, as though it has absorbed the countless acts of devotion performed here over centuries. The altar itself is bare now, but you can feel its presence, its weight, as if it's waiting for someone to come and complete the ritual once more. The legend of this altar has always been shrouded in mystery. No one truly knows what the final offering to the god Tiurakh really was. Some stories say it was a simple act of submission, a final surrender of everything the worshippers held dear: their wealth, their possessions, their lives. But other darker tales claim that the altar was a place where a more sinister exchange occurred, one that cost far more than material wealth. Those who made offerings here were said to be transformed, their very essence bound to Tiurakh's will. As you step closer, the stone is cold beneath your feet. The markings etched into its surface are faint, but you can still make them out. The script, though unread for ages, seems to pulse with its own energy. You recognize the shape of the market's Tiurakh sigil, the same one that haunted the temple walls, the one that branded his most devoted followers. It's carved deep into the stone, as if the altar itself was built to channel the god's power, to act as a conduit between the mortal and the divine. It's said that this altar wasn't just a place for physical offerings, but a site of transmutation, a way to convert material wealth into something far more dangerous. The riches laid upon this altar didn't just disappear. They were absorbed, converted into power and influence. But there's a deeper, more unsettling truth. The altar didn't just take wealth, it took life. The final offering, the one nobody ever spoke of, wasn't something you could just give away. No, it had to be earned. Tiurakh's worshippers believed the god demanded a balance. For every bit of wealth they gained, for every piece of power they possessed, they had to give something up in return. What could they give? What was worth more than their riches, their influence, or even their souls? It was said that the god demanded trust. But not just simple trust. This was a trust that went beyond words, beyond actions. It was trust in a promise made, a promise that could never be broken. And once the altar claimed that trust, it took so much more. Those who laid their final offerings here, believing they were offering everything to Tiurakh, were actually giving up more than they could ever realize. They were surrendering their essence, their connection to the world, to the very fabric of existence. The altar didn't just consume their wealth, it consumed their souls, binding them eternally to the god. The change was subtle at first, an increasing sense of unease, a hollow feeling that no amount of gold could fill. But in the end, those who gave their final offering found themselves transformed. Their power grew, their influence expanded, but they were no longer human. They were no longer individuals. They were merely extensions of Tiurakh's will. And what about those who didn't offer enough? Those who hesitated or held back? They were cast aside, abandoned by the god they had served. The altar, always hungry for more, wouldn't tolerate incomplete offerings. Those who failed the pact were left broken, wandering without purpose, their wealth useless. Their lives spent chasing a god who could not be appeased. You stand now before this very altar, your breath coming in shallow gasps. The weight of Tiurakh's presence is overwhelming, the air charged with an electric tension. You can almost sense the remnants of those who stood here before you, worshippers who gave everything and were consumed by it. The temple itself is haunted by their memories, their desires, their unfulfilled promises. The altar stands, waiting for the next offering, waiting for someone to take that final step, to give their trust, their soul, their very life. You can't help but wonder, if you were to place your own offering here, what would you give? What would Tiurakh take from you in exchange for the power, the wealth, the influence you desire? Could you make the ultimate sacrifice and risk losing everything you are in the pursuit of something greater? Or would you turn away, leaving this altar, this gateway between worlds, forever untouched? The weight of the decision is heavy. You feel the pull, as though the altar itself is calling to you, beckoning you to give just one more offering, to complete the ritual, to receive what has been promised. But as you reach out, your hand trembling, you can't shake the feeling that in the end, it isn't wealth or power that Tiurakh truly offers. It's transformation. The price is never just gold. The price is always something far more precious. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the lore. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more tales from the shadows. See you next time. The temple is silent once more, the air thick with the whispers of those long departed. You stand before the altar, its dark power still palpable, yet your thoughts drift elsewhere. You've heard tales of the last priest, one of the final worshippers of Tiurakh, a figure whose name is lost to time, but whose fate is a chilling reminder of the god's eternal hold. His story isn't one of glory or triumph, but of madness and slow decay, a warning for anyone who dares to seek the god's power. It is said that after the temple fell to ruin, after the cult of Tiurakh was scattered or destroyed, this last priest carried with him the final remnants of Tiurakh's knowledge that to this day is said to be cursed. He was the last one who truly understood the god's ways, the last to grasp the full depth of the power Tiurakh offered. His mind, however, could not bear the weight of what he knew. This priest had once been a man of influence, a leader within the cult, entrusted with the sacred texts, the rites, the rituals that bound the followers to their god. He was, in many ways, the closest to Tiurakh's divine will, intermediary between the mortal realm and the god's promises. And yet, as the last worshippers disappeared, as the temple fell into ruin, the priest found himself utterly alone with the knowledge of a god forgotten by time, and in his isolation, he began to question. The stories vary, but most agree that the priest left the ruins in search of answers. Answers to the question of why Tiurakh had abandoned his followers. Why had the god's promises remained unfulfilled? Why were those who served him left with nothing but their broken desires and empty souls? Some say the priest sought redemption. Others claim he was driven by a desperate need to understand what had gone so wrong. As he wandered the wilderness, his mind began to unravel. The knowledge he carried, the forbidden truths of Tiurakh's power, began to gnaw at him, to twist his perceptions of the world. The wealth, the power, the promises that had once seemed so alluring now felt like a curse, a weight too heavy to bear. The priest's once clear thoughts turned to madness, and soon, he could no longer distinguish the god's voice from his own. It's said that the priest, in his madness, became an embodiment of Tiurakh's curse. He wandered, muttering to himself, speaking of the god's wrath, of the price that had been paid, of the fate that awaited anyone who sought his power. He spoke of the unfulfilled promises, the haunting truth that no amount of wealth or power could ever truly satisfy the desires of the mortal heart. And yet, he could not stop seeking. Even in his madness, he continued to search, believing that if he could just understand, if he could just find the key to Tiurakh's secret, he could reverse the curse. In his final days, the priest is said to have written a journal, a collection of his ramblings, his theories, and his fragmented thoughts on Tiurakh's true nature. The journal, though disjointed and nearly impossible to decipher, contains references to a secret pact between Tiurakh and a forgotten empire, a pact that was never fully fulfilled, a pact that was broken, and perhaps that was the key. Perhaps the god's curse was not just a test of devotion, but a consequence of an ancient betrayal. The journal isn't the only clue. There are stories of the last priest's final days, when he stood at the edge of these very ruins, calling out to Tiurakh, demanding answers, demanding the fulfillment of the promises left unkept for so long. But the god did not respond. Instead, the priest is said to have fallen into a deep silence, his mind shattered, his body consumed by the very emptiness he had once sought to fill. In his madness, he became a living ghost.
Ow!
A reflection of Tiurakh's own eternal hunger, always searching, always desiring, but never satisfied. His body, starved and worn, wandered aimlessly, searching for the god who had abandoned him. His last words, spoken to no one in particular, are said to have been, "The god is gone, but his hunger remains." And so, the last priest, like so many before him, became lost. Lost to time, lost to the madness that consumed him, his mind a broken echo of the god's promises. But there is more to his story than simple madness. For in the last days of his wandering, the priest is said to have discovered something, a truth that could change everything. A hidden ritual, a final way to invoke Tiurakh's power. But the details of that discovery are lost, scattered across the pages of his journal. Locked away in the twisted words of a man who had given everything, only to be consumed by the very god he served. As you stand here in the ruins, the weight of the priest's fate hangs heavily in the air. The knowledge that he sought it, perhaps even the key to understanding Tiurakh's curse, is still out of reach, hidden within the pages of a maddened mind. And you are left to wonder, was the priest's madness a result of the god's abandonment? Or had he always been bound to Tiurakh's will? Was he merely another soul lost in the pursuit of power, a victim of his own desires? You feel the pull of the mystery, the temptation to seek out the final answers, to uncover what the priest discovered in his final moments. But as you step further into the darkened temple, you are confronted with a haunting truth. The knowledge of Tiurakh is not meant to be understood. It is a force that devours all who seek it, twisting them into something unrecognizable. The question remains, do you continue the search, risking your own soul, or do you turn away, leaving the god's secrets locked away forever? Thanks for watching. As you venture deeper into the ruins, the very ground seems to have split apart. The stone temple, once a grand testament to the god Tiurakh, is now a fractured silhouette against the sky. This isn't just the collapse of a building, it's the physical echo of a spiritual shatter. It feels deliberate, as if the walls were torn down to hide a secret, something the god never wanted found. The stones that once hummed with divine power are now just scattered fragments of a forgotten dream. Here in the heart of this devastation, amidst crumbling columns and a broken altar, the truth begins to surface. Tiurakh, the god of wealth, wasn't just abandoned by his followers, he was betrayed by the very forces he commanded. Something happened here, something so profound it caused the temple to implode, as if the god's own power had turned against him. Your fingers trace the ancient inscriptions on a damaged wall. Beneath layers of dust and neglect, a faint carving tells a story erased from all records. It speaks of a great betrayal, not from his people, but from Tiurakh himself. The carving is cryptic, but its message is clear. Tiurakh's wealth was never a gift. It was a tool of control. He didn't bestow riches. He ensnared his worshippers in a web of greed and desire. The power he granted was an illusion, a beautiful cage to ensure their obedience. But over time, that illusion began to fray. The wealth he provided became the very thing that poisoned his followers. The more they had, the more they wanted. And the more they wanted, the more of themselves they gave up, until only a hollow emptiness remained inside them. As you explore further, you realize Tiurakh's fall wasn't because his promises were empty. His wealth, his influence, was once truly infinite. His downfall was far more insidious. He wasn't overthrown. He was consumed by a crisis of belief. His followers, once content with the illusion of power, began to question the true nature of their god. The promises of endless riches started to ring hollow. As they turned away, the god of abundance became a god of emptiness. his influence faded into nothing. The temple didn't shatter from an external force, broke under the weight of lost faith. The riches once given freely are now just dust in the wind, because those who sought them could never truly possess them. See, Tiurakh's wealth was never meant to be accumulated. It was meant to be taken. And when his followers started taking it for themselves, trying to own the very power he granted, the god's influence crumbled. What was left wasn't wealth, but debt. The debt of devotion, the debt of desire, the debt of an impossible promise. The power he offered was never meant to be owned. It was meant to consume him. And in the end, that's exactly what it did. Stepping back from the ruins, your mind reels. Chilling unease hangs in the air, a feeling that you are not alone. The temple is destroyed, but its legacy of broken promises and unfulfilled desires remains. You can almost feel Tiurakh's absence, like a heavy weight, as if the god himself is watching, waiting for the next person to risk everything for wealth and power. The treasure you sought is not here. The question is no longer about Tiurakh's promises, but about you. Will you fall for the same temptation that claimed his followers, the desire to possess something that was never meant to be owned? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from Forgotten Worlds. Your journey into the heart of the ruined temple has led you here to an unexpected discovery. Amidst the shattered stone and crumbled columns, you find something that just shouldn't be here untouched, gleaming faintly in the oppressive dark. It's a chest of gold, seemingly abandoned but undisturbed by the relentless passage of time. The faint glow of the metal feels so out of place in this desolate ruin, as though it shouldn't exist in a place where everything else has decayed into nothingness. The glimmer of the gold is almost hypnotic, drawing you closer, as if it's calling your name. This is no ordinary chest. It's intricately carved, the metalwork exquisite. Covered in the same strange symbols you've seen etched into the temple walls and the altar, you recognize Tiurakh's mark, the sigil of wealth, power, and controls, whirling in delicate patterns across its surface. Yet as you draw near, you feel a shift in the air. It's a sensation you can't quite explain, a cold unease creeping along your spine. A whisper rises from deep within the chest itself. You hesitate, your hand hovering over the lid. The stories you've heard about this place, the cursed promises of Tiurakh, flash through your mind. It's said that the wealth given by the god was never truly for the taking, that once claimed, it comes at a terrible, unspeakable cost. Is this it? The final offering? The one that remains untouched by time, waiting for someone to make the same mistake as all those who came before. The whispers grow louder as you move closer. You don't hear them with your ears, but you feel them deep within your chest, like the faint ancient pulse of something alive. Take it, they murmur. A voice not entirely human, not entirely divine, slipping between the cracks of the temple's stone. Take what is yours, and more will follow. Wealth, power, all that you desire. You instinctively step back, the temptation hanging heavy and thick in the air. But the voices only grow louder, more insistent. You recognize them now. They read the same whispers that haunted Tiurakh, his followers, those who sought the god's wealth but found themselves cursed by it instead. The whispers don't stop. The chest just sits there, its gold gleaming, promising you everything that was once promised to them. With a growing sense of dread, you reach out. The moment your fingers touch the cool metal, the air around you changes. It becomes cold, thick with a sense of foreboding. It feels as though the gold is alive, breathing in time with your own heartbeat. The whispers intensify, swirling around you like a gathering storm. You lift the heavy lid. Inside, the gold glows with an unnatural light. It's piled high, more than you could ever dream of possessing. Coins, jewels, ancient relics all, shimmering with a radiance that has no place in this ruined temple. It's a treasure of unimaginable wealth, waiting for someone to claim it. But even as you stare, transfixed by the riches, you feel the weight of something else, a darkness, a pull that seems to emanate from the gold itself. The whispers speak again, more urgent now, more desperate. Now take it all. Your wealth, your power, it can all be yours. All you must do is claim it. And then, just as the thought crosses your mind to reach for the treasures, something clicks into place. You finally understand. The gold is not simply gold. It is cursed, This is not wealth meant to be spent or possessed. It is wealth that demands a price that cannot be measured in anything as simple as coins or riches. The temptation to take it is overwhelming, to grasp the riches of Tiurakh and fulfill his promise. But you realize now that it isn't a reward. It's a trap. The treasures inside this chest are not for the taking, not for anyone who seeks them with mortal desires. This chest is filled with the stolen souls of those who once believed that wealth could free them. The gold, the wealth, it's all empty. What is offered here is not material treasure, but the echo of what was taken from those who followed Tiurakh blindly, who surrendered their very essence in exchange for his false promises. These riches are not meant to be touched. They are a reminder of the cost, a testament to the lives consumed by greed and ambition. The whispers grow fainter now, like a fading dream. You step back from the chest, feeling the suffocating weight of the god's curse pressing down on you. The gold is still there, but now it seems insignificant, hollow. What is wealth without a soul to enjoy it? What is power when it comes at the cost of your very humanity? You close the chest. As the lid shuts, the air around you seems to release a held breath, as though the temple itself has exhaled. The whispers fade into total silence, leaving you with only the echo of their call. The chest remains untouched once again. A relic of a forgotten god who promised wealth but delivered only devastation. The gold is no longer tempting. The riches seem cheap, empty, a lie. A lure for those who could not see past their own desires. And now, as you turn away, you feel the true weight of Tiurakh's curse in the air. His wealth was never meant to be claimed by mortal hands. It was always a price too high to pay. The gold, the treasure, it is not for you. And perhaps it was never meant for anyone. It is a test. It is a warning. Those who seek what Tiurakh offers may find themselves with more than they ever bargained for. The deeper you explore the temple's ruins, the more you begin to understand the terrible truth. Tiurakh's wealth was never meant to be enjoyed. The gold, the jewels, the treasures, all of these were not gifts, but curses waiting to be unwrapped. Those who sought Tiurakh's favor never received the abundance they imagined. Instead, they were consumed by it, slowly, relentlessly. The wealth that Tiurakh promised was not a boon, but a burden that could never be escaped. As you turn away from the cursed chest, your mind begins to piece together the fragmented history of those who once worshipped here. They, too, had been drawn in by the promise of wealth. They had believed that the god would provide endless riches and boundless power. But what Tiurakh gave them was something far more insidious. The treasure they amassed in his name was not wealthy, was an endless chain of debts, growing with every offering, each sacrifice, till there was nothing left to give. You recall the ancient texts? The ones that spoke of Tiurakh's worshippers, the kings, the merchants, the noble houses who came to him for their fortunes. In the beginning, their offerings were simple, precious metals, rare gems, symbols of their loyalty. But over time, the offerings became darker. The wealth that Tiurakh granted them was no longer material. It became spiritual, a wealth that could only be possessed by the soul, a wealth that chained them to him forever. Those who were blessed by Tiurakh were not freed. They were bound to his will, their lives tethered to his power. And yet this was the god's true cruelty. The wealth was never enough. The more they acquired, the more they wanted. They were never content. No amount of gold, no matter how vast, could fill the emptiness that grew inside them. Tiurakh's wealth was not something to be possessed. It was something that possessed them. It consumed their very essence, until all that remained was an unquenchable hunger. A hunger for more. But the curse did not stop with the living. No, the god's grasp extended even beyond death. The worshippers who gave their all, who offered their wealth, their lives, their souls were bound to Tiurakh in a way they never expected. Their spirits did not pass on. They did not find rest. Instead, they became part of the god's endless hunger. Their souls, like the gold, were consumed, used to feed Tiurakh's insatiable need for power. And so, they wander, caught between worlds, forever searching, forever empty, forever bound to the god they once served. You feel the weight of their presence as you walk through the temple, their faint whispers echoing in your mind. The forgotten ones, the forsaken. They were once powerful, once mighty in their wealth, but now they are nothing. Their souls remain here, trapped in the god's unbroken grasp, unable to find peace. It is said that their voices can still be heard, calling out from the dark corners of the temple, crying for release, for redemption, for the fulfillment of the promises Tiurakh made to them. But there is no redemption, not here, not for them, and perhaps not for you either. You stop at the entrance to a deeper chamber, its doors cracked open, revealing the remnants of what was once a sacred vault where the most devoted of Tiurakh's followers would come to offer their final tributes, to give everything they had in exchange for the wealth they sought. What remains in the chamber now are nothing but scraps, broken relics, shattered treasures. Gold turned dull with age, and yet the whispers persist. You step inside, your eyes scanning the chamber. Among the remnants, you spot something, a discarded mask, encrusted with jewels, its surface tarnished with the passage of time. It is said that those who reached the highest ranks of Tiurakh's cult would wear these masks as part of the final ritual. Their faces obscured, their identities erased, symbolizing their complete submission to the god's will. The mask, you realize, is not just a symbol, it is a trap. Those who wore it were no longer individuals. They were vessels for Tiurakh's power, empty of self, consumed by the god's eternal hunger. You feel a chill as you approach the mask, its eyes hollow, staring into nothing. There is a deep sadness in the emptiness behind its gaze. It is as though the mask itself mourns for those who once wore it, for those who gave everything they had, only to be swallowed by their own desires. But even now, even in death, Tiurakh's influence lingers. The mask, like the gold, remains waiting to claim another soul. A shiver runs down your spine as you step back from the mask, and you suddenly feel the weight of the god's curse pressing down on you. The wealth, the treasures, the gold, they are not yours to take. They are a burden, a weight that will drag you down, consume you, until nothing is left but emptiness. The promises of Tiurakh are not promises of abundance, but of an eternal hunger. There is no satisfaction, no contentment. There is only the pursuit, the endless, insatiable pursuit of more. As you leave the chamber, the mask stays in your mind, its empty eyes haunting you. You realize now that Tiurakh's wealth was never meant to be a gift. It was a test. A test that those who worshipped him failed because they could never understand the true nature of his power. His wealth was not for the taking. It was for the taking, but only in the way that a flame takes a moth, drawing it in until there is nothing left. And now you two stand at the edge of Tiurakh's promises. Will you turn away, or will you, like those before you, fall into the trap? The choice is yours, but the god's hunger remains, patient and waiting, for those who cannot resist. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the lore, make sure to like and subscribe for more. The ruins grow colder as you move through the crumbling corridors of the temple. You can feel the weight of Tiurakh's forgotten power still heavy in the air, his promises echoing in the hollow spaces like the ghost of a long-lost memory. It feels like he's all around you, his whispers urging you forward, beckoning you to understand the true nature of the pact that once bound his followers to him. But something feels wrong. The answers you seek don't feel lost. They feel deliberately hidden, buried beneath layers of time, dust, and deception. And then you find it. A hidden chamber tucked away in the deepest recesses of the temple. Its entrance is almost imperceptible against the stone, the threshold worn smooth by centuries of neglect. Inside, the air is thick with the musty scent of forgotten things. The walls are lined with ancient scrolls, brittle and decaying, their ink faded and barely legible. But amidst the ruins, one scroll catches your eye. It's different, larger, more meticulously crafted, its seal still intact. You approach cautiously, feeling the weight of the parchment as you break the seal. The script is unfamiliar, ancient, written in a language you don't recognize. But there's something about it that calls to you, a sense of familiarity, as though these words have been waiting for you to find them. As you read, the meaning begins to unfold, and the terrible truth of the pact between Tiurakh and his followers slowly comes into focus. This was no ordinary pact. It was a binding contract made in the darkest corners of time, transcending the usual exchanges between gods and mortals. Tiurakh's wealth, his promises of power and influence, were not freely given. They were the result of a trade, but not one based on any mortal understanding of exchange. The terms were brutally clear. Tiurakh would bestow unimaginable wealth upon his followers. But in return, they would offer something far more precious than gold. They would offer their faith, their loyalty, and most terrifying of all, their soul. The wealth, the treasures, the power, it was all part of the pact, but the true cost was far more insidious. This wealth wasn't just material, it was spiritual. Each coin, each jewel, each piece of gold taken by Tiurakh's followers was a fragment of their very essence, a piece of their soul given up in exchange for the god's favor. And as they continued to take, to claim, to hoard, their souls were slowly drained, bit by bit, until nothing was left but an empty husk, forever bound to the god who had consumed them. As you read the final lines of the scroll, a cold shiver runs down your spine. The pact wasn't broken because Tiurakh failed to deliver on his promises. It was broken by greed. Tiurakh had given his followers everything they asked for: wealth beyond imagination, power that bent the world to their will, but they could never stop. The more they took, the more they wanted. With each acquisition, they gave more of themselves away until finally there was nothing left to give. The pact collapsed in on itself like a black hole devouring everything in its wake. That was the breaking point. When Tiurakh's followers could no longer fulfill their side of the bargain, the god's power began to fade. The wealth they had so eagerly claimed turned to dust, their riches became hollow, their power meaningless. The gold they hoarded could not fill the emptiness inside them, and so they were abandoned. But Tiurakh did not let them go. He couldn't. The broken pact had one final terrible consequence. The souls of those who had once worshipped him, those who had offered their very essence for his false promises, became trapped. They could not pass on, could not find rest. Instead, they were bound to the god's broken realm. Their spirits caught forever between life and death, unable to escape the hunger that had consumed them. They remain here, wandering these ruins, the last remnants of Tiurakh's once great cult. Their faint, broken voices can still be heard in the shadows. They are the forsaken ones, bound to the god who betrayed them, trapped in a cycle of endless desire, forever searching for riches that will never come. Standing there, holding the scroll, you realize the full weight of what you've uncovered. Tiurakh's promises were never meant to be fulfilled. They were designed to consume, to strip away everything until only the hunger remained. The pact wasn't a contract, it was a prison for the soul. You now understand why the temple was destroyed. It wasn't time or greed that brought it down. The temple fell because the pact was broken. Walls, the altar, the golded, was all part of the illusion. A trap set to ensnare those who believed they could possess Tiurakh's wealth without paying the price. But the temple isn't truly empty. The curse still lingers in the air, in the stones, in the very foundation of this place. The wealth, the treasures, they are not gone. They are still here, waiting for someone new to come, to claim them, to fall into the same trap. And now, the question is for you. Will you continue the search? Will you follow the same path as those who came before, seeking the wealth that promises so much but costs everything? Costs everything, leaving the broken pact behind, and perhaps break free of the god's influence for good? Let me know what you would do in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for more. As I process the secrets of the broken pact, the atmosphere around me grows heavier. The very air seems to thicken, as if the temple itself is holding its breath, waiting for something or someone to come and seal the final fate of those who came before me. The weight of the knowledge I've uncovered presses down on me like 1,000 stones, the gravity of the god's curse hanging in the balance. I move through the remains of the temple, my mind racing with the implications of the pact, of the broken promises, of the souls trapped in an endless cycle. Tiurakh's wealth, his so-called blessing, was never a gift. It was a trap, one that consumed the very essence of those who sought it. The worshippers of Tiurakh never left with their wealth. They left with a debt that could never be repaid. And now, that debt still echoes in these ruins, in the very bones of the temple itself. The question I've been avoiding now presses on me with an unsettling clarity. What happens to those who could not fulfill the pact? What becomes of the souls who sought Tiurakh's favor but failed to give enough? Those who reached for more, who took what they could never possess, who fell into the trap of desire and greed. I'm beginning to understand the true nature of the debt. It wasn't financial. No, this debt was far worse. It was a spiritual debt, one that could never be erased, one that bound the worshippers to Tiurakh for eternity. The curse of unfulfilled promises wasn't just a consequence of greed. It was a cycle of debt that compounded with every desire, with every offering that was not enough. The more they sought, the more they gave, the more the debt grew, till there was nothing left but empty souls, wandering the earth in search of what could never be reclaimed. I recall the whispers I heard earlier. Faint voices that seemed to speak from the walls, from the very stones beneath my feet. The voices of those who had been consumed by the wealth they had sought, souls trapped in an endless, unpayable debt. They are still here, still bound to this place, their spirits unable to move on. They are the forsaken ones, the forgotten ones, who gave everything to Tiurakh and received nothing in return. The idea of spiritual debt begins to take on a deeper meaning. These souls aren't just lost, they are chained. They are bound to the God they once served, trapped in a cycle of endless desire and sacrifice. The wealth they accumulated was not enough to fill the void that grew within them, so they were abandoned, left to wander in the shadows of the temple, forever bound to Tiurakh's insatiable hunger. And yet, the god's debt is not confined to the dead. I feel it now, an oppressive weight pressing down on me as I stand in the heart of this forsaken place. The temple is not just a relic. It is a living monument to the debt that Tiurakh's followers incurred. A monument that demands payment from anyone who dares to seek the wealth that remains here. I realize that the god's influence is not just a memory, it is a curse. The debt has never been repaid, and the wealth remains, waiting for someone to make the ultimate offering. As I move further into the temple, something catches my eye. A set of old tarnished chains resting in a forgotten corner. They are not ornamental, these chains are heavy, made of a dark, almost black metal, engraved with the same symbols I have seen throughout the temple. Tiurakh's mark is etched into the links as though they are part of the ritual, part of the price that must be paid. I approach the chains cautiously, knowing that whatever they represent, they are not meant to be touched. They are not mere decorations. They are the price. The price of the wealth, the price of the power that Tiurakh once promised. The chains are not just physical. They represent the spiritual debt, the unending burden that those who worshipped Tiurakh were doomed to carry. I'm struck by the realization that Tiurakh did not simply offer wealth to his followers. He enslaved them. Their desires were never their own. Their thirst for power, their hunger for influence, were all manipulated, twisted by the god until they were bound to him in ways they never could have imagined. They thought they were gaining control, but in the end, they were the ones controlled. Their debt was not just the price of wealth, it was the price of their very souls. The chains before me, heavy with history, tell a story of enslavement, of those who once believed they could possess the god's wealth and live freely. But freedom was never part of Tiurakh's bargain. The chains are not a relic of the past. They are still here, still waiting for someone to take them, to accept the god's debt and continue the cycle. I wonder for a moment if I am the next in line. Is the curse now calling to me? Waiting for me to take the chains and pay the debt that Tiurakh's followers could never repay. The weight of the question lingers in my mind. The chains, the wealth, the promises, they are all part of the same curse, a cycle of debt that can never be broken. And I realize now with a cold certainty that the only way to escape this place is to leave it all behind. To walk away from the god's influence, from the promise of wealth that has never been more than a trap. But as I turn to leave, I hear it, the faintest whisper, carried on the wind. Don't, duh. The debt is never paid, traveler. It never ends. You cannot escape the price of wealth. You cannot escape the hunger. The voice is not Tiurakh's, but it is the voice of those who have been lost. Those who gave everything for what they thought was power. I feel it in my bones, a truth that can never be erased. The price of wealth is not just the things you lose, but the soul that is given in exchange for it. Thanks for watching. If you want to uncover more dark secrets with me, make sure to subscribe. The temple, once a place of shining splendor, now lies in ruin. The golden wealth, the broken dreams, and the unfulfilled promises of Tiurakh's followers are scattered across these stones like forgotten relics of a bygone age. As I move deeper into the temple's heart, the air changes. Silence, once absolute, is now thick with something else. something that feels alive in a way it shouldn't be. It's as if the very air is holding its breath, tense, anticipating the arrival of someone who hasn't been seen for eons. I pause. The whispers that have followed me since I entered this forsaken place are growing louder, more insistent. They no longer feel like mere echoes of the past, but a presence, a force that stretches beyond these crumbling walls. The god is not truly gone. I can feel it in the way the air shifts and coils around me and the subtle flicker of my torchlight. Tiurakh's absence was never a true end. There were no final words, no closing chapter to his reign. And in that emptiness, there is an unsettling promise. His influence may have faded into myth, but it has not disappeared. It lingers, waiting. I turn, and at first I can't be sure if my senses are deceiving me. The temple is dark, the corners filled with shadows that stretch impossibly long. But there, just at the edge of my vision, I see them, faint, flickering lights, like the ghostly glint of gold. Figures are standing among the ruined columns, their outlines barely visible against the stone. They don't move, they don't speak, but they are there, waiting, watching, their eyes gleaming with the same hunger I've felt ever since I arrived. These figures aren't from the past. They're not dead. They are the living shadows of Tiurakh's followers, the last of his devotees, waiting for his return. The hairs on the back of my neck stand on end as I realize these figures are not just figments of my imagination. They are bound to this place, bound to the god who left them behind. And they wait for his return, for the fulfillment of his broken promises. Their souls remain trapped by the spiritual debt they once owed him, their desire for wealth still burning as strong as it ever was. The temple itself seems to respond to their presence, the very stones vibrating with a low, imperceptible hum. The whispers are louder now, and I realize they are the voices of those still waiting, their longing unquenched. The power they sought still burns within them, and they know Tiurakh's return is inevitable. But will he return? Will he rise again to reclaim his dominion over wealth and power? Or is this temple a prison, binding both god and worshipper in a never-ending cycle of desire? As I step closer to the figures, a sudden, sharp clarity washes over me. These worshippers aren't just waiting for a god. They are waiting for a blessing that can never come, for wealth that can never fill the emptiness inside them. They are trapped in a spiritual debt that has no end, and my heart beats faster. The truth presses in. They are waiting for the moment the god will rise again and give them the one thing they never truly had, the wealth that would finally satisfy them. They are waiting to be freed, but they don't understand that their freedom can never come. Tiurakh will return, but not as a god of abundance. He will return as a god of hunger, whose promises are designed only to consume. I've stumbled upon something darker than I could have imagined. Tiurakh's return is not the return of a god, but the return of an endless cycle of unfulfilled desire. The curse will begin again. I step back, the weight of this realization crushing me. The figures are still there, waiting, their eyes burning with a desperation I can feel deep in my chest. I've been marked by Tiurakh's curse, the same curse that claimed the souls of those who came before me. Their longing for wealth, their insatiable desire for more, has bound them to this place. And now, that same hunger is starting to grow within me. Tiurakh is not a god who gives riches. He's a god who consumes them. And his return will be a return to the cycle of never-ending want, a cycle that will trap me just as it has trapped them. The air grows heavy with this knowledge, and I understand I have a choice to make. Do I continue to seek the wealth that Tiurakh offers, knowing it comes with a price too high to pay? Or do I walk away leaving this influence behind and hope that the curse will not claim me as it has so many others? The god's return is inevitable, but my fate is still in my hands. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the lore, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the shadows. Tiurakh's presence grows stronger now, his shadow stretching over the ruins, his influence like a heavy mist filling the temple. The figures in the distance, his waiting worshippers, stand frozen, caught in the same cycle they've been in for centuries, unable to move forward, unable to escape the god's grasp. Their eyes are hollow, empty of all but desire. Their hunger, once so innocent, has become something grotesque, something unrecognizable. You feel it now, a weight in your chest, an undeniable pull toward them, toward the wealth they seek. toward the promises that Tiurakh once made and now never intends to fulfill. It is not just the God's presence you feel, but the temptation, the unfathomable desire for more, for what you have always lacked. And as you take another step into the temple's heart, the truth begins to unfold before you in a way you could never have anticipated. You realize that you were mistaken about Tiurakh, about everything. Tiurakh was never the god of wealth in the way you thought. He was not a god who merely bestowed riches or power. He was the god of transformation. His wealth was never meant to be possessed. It was meant to possess those who sought it. The true cost of his blessings was not material, it was spiritual. Those who sought Tiurakh's wealth did not gain it, they became it. The wealth they amassed was not gold or jewels, but the very essence of the world itself. It was a power that connected them to everything, to fate, to time, to the unseen forces that bind all things, and that power was not theirs to hold. It was Tiurakh's. You realize, as the pieces come together in your mind, that Tiurakh did not simply consume the souls of his followers. He transformed them. Each soul that offered itself to Tiurakh, each sacrifice made, did not vanish, was absorbed, but in such a way that it became part of the god. The wealth was not a physical treasure, it was the very fabric of existence, reshaped and reformed by those who dared to enter the god's domain. The ones who worshipped him became his vessels, their desires, their wishes, their souls, all bound together in a singular, eternal purpose to fuel Tiurakh's hunger. The gold, the treasures, they were not just symbols. They were the currency of a forgotten realm, a realm where the boundaries between God and mortal were blurred beyond recognition. Tiurakh's followers believed they were trading for wealth, but in reality, they were trading their very essence. Each offering, each act of devotion, was a pact that tied them closer to the god, till there was nothing left of them but a reflection of his power. In the silence of the temple, you begin to understand. The final fragment of truth is this: Tiurakh was not the giver of wealth, he was the creator of hunger. His godhood did not reside in riches. It resided in the act of seeking, of needing, and through that need, he grew stronger, consuming all who gave themselves over to it. His wealth was not to be possessed, it was to consume, to transform, to leave nothing but empty shells, bound to his eternal desire. It becomes clear now that Tiurakh was never defeated by his followers' greed. His wealth was never a thing to be attained, it was a cycle that was never meant to end. Each generation of worshippers fell into the same trap. They believed that the god could be appeased, that they could have what he promised, but they never could. And with each failed attempt, each broken promise, Tiurakh grew more powerful, his hunger more insatiable. You pause, letting the weight of this truth settle in your chest. The god's power is not just something that existed in the past, it is something that still exists, waiting for those foolish enough to seek it. The hunger of Tiurakh is not an empty void. It is a force alive, breathing, twisting through time, feeding on those who seek to possess what was never meant to be owned. And now you understand. The question that has haunted you throughout this journey is not whether Tiurakh will return, it's how he will return. The god does not need to rise from the ashes of this temple. He has never left. He is here, in the very air you breathe, in the stone beneath your feet, in the temple that still stands, broken and empty, yet pulsing with the god's eternal hunger. The figures in the distance, the ones waiting for his return, they are not waiting for a god to resurrect. They are waiting for the cycle to begin again, for the next worshippers to arrive, for the next souls to offer themselves, and for the next transformation to take place. Tiurakh is not a god who sleeps. He is a god who feeds, who waits for the hunger of others to grow so large, so impossible to ignore, that they will walk willingly into the temple, ready to offer whatever remains of themselves. You feel it now, the pull of Tiurakh's influence stronger than ever. The truth has been revealed, and it is more horrifying than you could have imagined. The god's wealth is not a prize to be won. It is a curse that traps those who seek it in an endless cycle of hunger and need. And now, you must make the choice. Will you turn away, leaving Tiurakh's hunger to continue, knowing the price of the wealth that was never meant to be possessed? Or will you take the final step, offering yourself to the god, knowing that you too will be consumed, forever bound to the cycle of his eternal hunger? The choice is yours, but the god's whisper is close now, and it is hungry. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you would choose in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Here you are, standing on the threshold. The final step lies ahead, and the weight of everything you've learned, everything you've seen, presses down on your very soul. The temple, now silent and still, hums with a life you can't quite grasp. The broken walls, the shattered altar, the cursed gold, they're all pieces of the same truth. The same eternal cycle that Tiurakh's followers once entered, never to escape. You feel the god's presence, not as some grand figure, but as something intimate, something wrapping around your heart, pulling you closer, urging you to take that final step. Tiurakh is not a god who gives, he is a god who takes. His wealth, his promises, they were never meant to be attained. They were meant to be consumed. Those who sought him, who desperately desired what he offered, didn't walk away with riches. They walked away empty, hollowed out. Their souls were slowly stripped away, fed into the god's insatiable hunger. Their lives, once full of ambition and fire, became nothing more than fuel for his eternal cycle of need. And now, you stand at the center of it all. The whispers are louder, more urgent. The wealth, the power, it's all here, just within reach. And yet, you know better than anyone that it's all a mirage. The gold, the jewels, the promises of influence, they were never meant to bring joy or satisfaction. They were only meant to feed a hunger that has never, ever been sated. You cannot possess what Tiurakh offers without losing yourself in the process. The very act of wanting, of desiring, ties you to him. It's a chain, invisible but stronger than any physical bond. You wonder for a moment if you've already fallen victim to the cycle. Perhaps in your quest to uncover the truth, you've already become part of the god's endless hunger. Tiurakh's power isn't just in the riches he grants it, it's in the desire he awakens in you. The hunger grows until you can no longer tell where you end and the god begins. It's a hunger that is never filled, and with every step you take forward, it grows stronger, more relentless. You turn back to the figures, the worshippers still waiting, still locked in their cycle of desire. Their eyes gleam in the half-light, their faces frozen in expressions of pure longing. They don't see you. They don't see anything but the god's promise, the wealth they believe they are entitled to. Their souls are long gone, and yet they remain, caught in the eternal snare of Tiurakh's hunger. And you realize with a deep, crushing sorrow that they will never escape. They can't, because the god is not just an entity. He is the desire itself, the need for more. The final truth settles heavily upon you. Tiurakh's wealth was never meant to be enjoyed. It was meant to be possessed, not by the worshippers, but by the god. He has always been the one who consumes. Those who sought his wealth, who offered up their souls and their lives, were always meant to be the fuel for his hunger. The more they desired, the more they gave, and the more they were consumed. The cycle has never ended, and it will not end with you. Not unless you leave it behind. Not unless you resist the pull. The silence of the temple is deafening now, broken only by the faint sound of your own breath. The fluttering of the old, decaying pages around you. You stand at the heart of Tiurakh's power, and you realize that you are the only one who can choose now. You, the one who has sought the god's secrets, who has uncovered the darkness that binds his wealth to the souls of the lost, have the final say. You can feel the pull of Tiurakh, the temptation to reach out and claim what he offers. The wealth, the power, the endless promise of more. But now you understand the price. The cost of this wealth isn't just the loss of your soul, it is the end of your soul. To give yourself to Tiurakh is to become part of the cycle, to join the endless line of those who have been consumed by their desire for more. You will never be free. You will be just another face in the crowd, another figure waiting, eternally for a god who will never truly fulfill your hunger. And so, you must choose. Will you give in? Become one of them, one of the many who have fallen before you. Will you claim Tiurakh's wealth and lose yourself in the process? Or will you turn away, knowing that the god's hunger will never end, but refusing to be part of it, you turn to leave. You step away from the altar, from the figures, from the temple itself. The god's whispers grow faint, distant, and you realize with absolute clarity that the wealth he offers is not meant to be taken. It is meant to be left behind. To walk away from the hunger To refuse the curse that ties you to him is the hardest thing you have ever done. But it is the only thing you can do. The god's hunger will continue, but you, for now, are free. You've journeyed through Tiurakh's temple, haven't you? Puzzled over the mysteries of a forgotten god, felt the magnetic pull of his unending hunger for wealth. It's a path many have walked before, a cycle that has consumed countless souls, and now it rests in your hands. The choice seems clear, but it's far from simple. Tiurakh's influence, though unseen, still clings to the temple's decaying stones. It whispers to you in the dead of night, stirring that faint echo of desire deep within your core. But something is different this time. As you turn your back, as you walk toward the temple's exit, away from the spectral figures still waiting, still trapped in that endless cycle of wanting, you feel a profound shift. The immense weight of Tiurakh's influence begins to lessen, but the awareness of what he represents, of what his followers have become, that stays with you. It's a constant, chilling reminder. 8. The temple itself, even in its ruin, seems to watch you leave. Its broken walls are like silent observers, almost as if they too are waiting for the next soul to wander in. The next worshiper to fall into the exact same trap. This place, this power, it isn't gone, not truly. The hunger, the insatiable desire, the desperate need for more, it's all still here. Simmering deep beneath the surface, a faint echo of a god that will never be truly forgotten. You pass through the temple's grand gates, and with each step you take, the heavy weight of its curse lifts a little more. The air outside is still, almost unnervingly so, as if the entire world is holding its breath, watching you. This is a world that has moved on, a world that has tried to leave behind the old gods and their endless, empty promises. And yet, even here, in the profound silence of the night, you can still hear at the faintest of whispers, the last dying remnants of Tiurakh's power, but they are fading. You take a deep breath, truly feeling the solid ground of the world you now inhabit. A world free from the god's suffocating grasp. You've learned the truth, haven't you? The hard truth is that wealth, in all its alluring forms, is fleeting. It's ephemeral. And Tiurakh, the supposed god of wealth, was never a giver of riches. He was a god of need, a god of hunger, a god of the endless. Fruitless search for something that could never, ever be satisfied. The more you reach for it, the more it takes from you. You know now, with a certainty that chills you to the bone, that the true curse isn't what you gain, but what you lose in the desperate search. It's about what you give away. What pieces of yourself you sacrifice in the pursuit of something that was never meant to be yours in the first place. The temple is behind you now, a dark silhouette being swallowed by the encroaching forest. It's no longer a place of power or temptation or broken promises. It is simply a ruin, a monument to forgotten greed, like so many others in a world where the gods have crumbled into memory, where their promises no longer hold any sway over the hearts of mortals, eh? But as you walk away into the freedom of the night, there's one final thought that stays with you. It's the quietest whisper, a thought that still lingers in the deepest recesses of your mind, a chilling premonition for what comes next. It says, if your candle hasn't gone out, then you're probably ready for the next god. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the lore, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the Forgotten Realms.